Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about the next World Tour stage race, which is beginning today, and that is Itzulia, or the English name for it, the Tour of the Basque Country. Always an exciting race in my opinion, because it is a clash between not only the riders who try to get into top shape for the Ardennes Classics, but it is also one of the first real tests for the guys who want to be good later on in the year in the general classification of the Grand Tours, be it the Giro d'Italia next month, or even after that. People try to see where they're at in front of the Tour de France for their first little peak in April. So yeah, really interesting race to see where the general classification riders are, but also where the Ardennes Classics specialists are headed form-wise. And today we'll start with an individual time trial of 11 kilometers, which should make the race really interesting overall, because some riders will lose time they will have to make up later on in the race. That is why I always enjoy these short little time trials at the beginning of a stage race. It puts pressure on some riders who then have to ride aggressively. And this time trial especially is interesting because we have a little hill, which is the Antio, with a length of 2.2 kilometers at an average gradient of 9.5%. It is located between 6 and 8 kilometers into the time trial, so after the top we'll have a descent of 3 kilometers to the finish. And that gives not only the pure time trialists a chance, but also the punchy riders we talked about before, the Ardennes specialists, who can put out a lot of wattage on those little steep hills. And I expect riders who can combine both, get a little punch, or pack a little punch, but also have a decent time trial position, that they should do really well. Speaking of time trial, the defending champion is not at the race, Roglic said, because he wanted to do well at the Giro d'Italia. He will ride the Tour de Romandie and not the Itzulia this year around. So he cannot be considered a favorite for this time trial, which he would be, obviously, because he's one of those guys who can do it both. But yeah, he's not at the start line, sadly. But let's talk about the other stages. Except the last stage to Eibar, and obviously today, we should always have a slight uphill finish to some degree, sometimes more, sometimes less, but all in all uphill finish, but only one real mountaintop finish, which is the Arate. The Arate is on the second to last stage. It is 6 kilometers long with an average gradient of 7.4 kilometers. Last year that stage was won by Enric Mas of the Koenig Quickstep in front of Mikel Landa, and third place was Johnny Zagire. All three of them will be at the start line in 2019 again, so look out for those guys. But yeah, since we only have one real mountaintop finish, that is the stage where the riders who will lose time today in the time trial, where they will have to make it up, where they will have to attack and try to get that lost time back. That is probably the only chance. That should be an epic stage, but still the other stages are... you can make up time, it's just that much harder, because Arate has the length to put some time into your opponents if you have a great day. We saw that over the years multiple times on that stage. But yeah, that is the course. Really interesting, because we have that mountaintop finish, we have the time trial, we have a few uphill finishes where people can gain or lose, again, a few seconds if they're well or badly positioned inside the peloton. If there are splits at the end, if the sprinters or lead-out guys will get dropped unexpectedly, and you as a general classification rider are trapped behind, you can lose in an instant 10 to 20 seconds, and there's not much. It's only 6 stages, so not much time to get it back, the lost time, the lost seconds. And because of that, the two stages I will focus the most on are actually the time trial and the stage to Arate. But the other four are really interesting stages because, like I said, a multitude of riders can do well. Punchy sprinters, they are dance classic specialists, and we'll have to see who will prevail at the end of this race. And that brings me to the favorites. So let's look at the favorites who should do well or could do well this year. I want to start with Mikel Landa because he was second last year, and like I said before, Roglic is not on the start line. It is Landa's home race, and he did pretty well recently at the Coppier Bartali, so he got his form back. Should be interesting to see if he can win the race this time for Movistar. He should be the sole leader. Some people jokingly said on the internet that Betancourt will win this race, but that is kind of a running gag around the community. But yeah, Mikel Landa in his home race should be motivated to do well once again, like he did last year already. Then next on my list I have Astana, and I just named the whole team because let's take a look at it. Astana will send Vogelsang, Bilbao, Omar Freire, both Izagirre brothers, Luis Leon Sanchez, and Lutsenko to this race. So yeah, Astana can basically win this race with all 7 riders. I'm not even joking. Astana is the team of the year so far. They are that strong. They have 21 wins already, more than any other team. They have 45 podiums in total, and we're only at the start of April. So that should give you an indicator of how well they are doing this season. And I honestly don't know who they will ride for. It depends probably a lot on the time trial today. Who will have to fetch water bottles, who will be a protected rider, but yeah, all 7 of them I think have a decent shot at a top 10, and I would say 5 of the 7 guys could potentially really fight out for a podium or even the victory of the stage race. So Astana sends a ridiculous squad, and if they race the same way they have ridden before this season, which is basically the De Koning way, you just send one of your stronger riders up the roads, let the other teams do the chasing, send another guy up the road as soon as the first one is caught, and so on until the other teams have no one left to chase and one rider solos to victory for Astana. It is a simple tactic, but you also need 2 things. You need a lot of strong riders and unselfish strong riders who will attack knowing they could get caught and then have to work for a teammate behind, even though they are actually strong enough on that day to win themselves. And that is why they let go of riders like Fabio Aro in the past, who wants to win himself, and they got riders like Vogelsang, for example, who is a great teammate who can also enjoy it when one of his mates takes the victory. Or Lutsenko the same way. But yeah, Astana probably the most dangerous team in this race with a lot of strong riders. But that would put also pressure on them if they don't have someone in the break, if they don't have someone up the road, because every team will look at them and say, well, you have so many strong riders, you do the chasing. So this tactic relies on the fact that they have someone up the road. We shall see how that will pan out for them. The last 2 months they were incredible. They won a lot of races with this newfound tactic that the Belgian teams used for a long time now, and they apply it to stage racing, and it actually works. So good for them. Next on my list, I have Julien Alaphilippe and Enric Mas for the Koenig Quickstep. Two riders who I think could do well. Alaphilippe more for stages, while Enric Mas will probably go for the general classification. Last year he had his breakout campaign. His breakout race actually was Itzulia. His first pro victory came at this race, like I said, up to Arate. And he also had a great result in the general classification in the end, where he finished 6th overall. Because of that stage, he was going into the stage a little bit lower down on the GC because he had to ride for Alaphilippe, who then cracked up to Arate. So this year around he will be a protected rider from the start. Could mean he would go better. But on the other hand, Enric Mas this season started slower because he wants to peak for the Tour de France. There are some other riders in this race who have also not done much on the year, but why should they if they want to perform in July, when they want to be on their best form during the summer? Why should they destroy the fields in March? Enric Mas is basically the same. He started at Algarve with a 4th place overall, and then recently in Catalonia finished at the end 9th overall with a 2nd place finish on the last stage, which moved him up in the general classification a few spots. But other than that, he had a really unspectacular spring season so far, which I don't mind when it goes according to plan and he performs in the summer as he hopes. Then this preparation is the correct approach. And then an interesting rider is his teammate, Julien Alaphilippe. We talked about Astana, the team with the most wins. They have one more than the Koenig, but a lot of more podium places in total. So, but yeah, the Koenig not a bad team either. And Alaphilippe is the single rider with the most victories in 2019 so far, with 7. And now you could say, is he that much stronger than last season? Or was he actually having his first peak of the season, not in April, but in March? He said after he lost the World Championships that he wanted a new focus, that 2 of his main goals of the season were actually not the Ardennes Classics, but Strade Bianche and Sanremo. He won both of those races, so that worked out for him, that plan. But I don't know if he can hold his great form until the end of April, when there are the Ardennes Classics. That will be interesting to see where he is at right now, and also then when the Ardennes start. So Alaphilippe, great preparation for different races than he usually does, but I'm not sure if he can hold this momentum, because we have seen with Peter Sagan, who wants to keep his shape up until Liège-Bastogne-Liège this year. And we've seen it throughout his cobbled campaign so far, that he is missing something, because he's just not there yet. And Alaphilippe could be the other way around. He was there too early, or not too early, he won the races he wanted to win, but that he could fade in April because he gets into a hole of form. We shall see. Enric Mas and Alaphilippe, definitely not a bad tandem for the team. Then the next interesting team is actually Bora. We talked about a lot in previous videos, but once again they have a strong squad, I think, with at least 3 interesting riders in Maximilian Schachmann, Emanuel Buchmann and Patrick Conrad. Those 3 riders should do well. And honestly, I don't know who will be the captain, because you would say, okay, on a mountainous terrain, you would say it's Buchmann. On a hilly terrain, it should be Schachmann. And with Conrad, you never know. He's kind of the wild card, in my opinion, who they could throw in just anywhere. Schachmann had a really great season so far. He was not bad either last year, winning a Giro d'Italia stage and so on. But yeah, this year as a team captain for punchy stages, lumpy stages, for the Ardennes types of races. He has shown that he is an attacking rider. He has shown that he has actually a decent sprint after such a stage. And the Koenig could not guarantee him that he would be captain for many big races, because they have Alaphilippe, they have Gilbert, they have Enric Mas. So they let him go. So now he is at Bora and is there the unquestioned leader for those kind of races. Well, unquestioned maybe with Peter Sagan, who wants to do well in the Ardennes this year, but yeah. Interesting riders to watch for Bora. I would put neither of them at the top of my step, because Schachmann is like Alaphilippe. He should lose time up to Arate, and that will diminish his chances of winning the overall. But both of them are great bets for taking a stage in between of the race and getting the form in for the classics later this month. Then another rider here on my list is Adam Yates, who also has Lucas Hamilton in his team. So how will Yates perform, but also what can his teammate Lucas Hamilton do, who won the Coppi Bartali, which we talked about before. Landa came in fourth at that race, behind three riders of Mitchelton Scott, and on the top step we had actually young rider Lucas Hamilton. Will he be a domestic? Will he be in a free role for Mitchelton Scott? And what can Adam Yates do? The same goes with UAE, who have Dan Martin as the captain, and also have Tadej Pogacar as a helper, or maybe in a free role, because the young rider won actually the Algarve Tour. And there's another interesting tandem, because you have, in both of these teams, you have an experienced, strong rider, but you also have really talented young guns who actually won a stage race not too long ago. That will be an interesting dynamic to follow, how they will perform. Then I have Daniel Martinez on my list. Can he follow what Alberto Bettiol did yesterday and win big? He was already really well placed at Paris-Nice, but could not take the overall quite yet. Maybe he can do it this race. Really interesting, promising rider, Daniel Martinez. Same with David Gaudu for FDJ. I'm excited to see what he can do in these kind of stages, in this kind of race. Also, Bauke Mollema. Bauke Mollema had a few decent results in the last few weeks, so he should be up there. And we'll have to see if he can actually achieve the top step. His problem will always be that he does not have the sprint at the end. So if there's a group, Mollema will fail to win the sprint. So he has to make up time going long on Arate probably. Then we have also on my list Jelle van Endert, because like I said, the Ardennes Classics are right around the corner, and last year he had a really great campaign in those races, or the last few years actually. And what can he do on the lumpy stages? He's not a favorite for the overall in my opinion, but maybe a stage win could be possible. Then I have George Bennett and Sepp Kuss on my list. Sepp Kuss was, how should I put it? He was also unspectacular in the early season. He was hampered by a crash, by injuries. He had a really great Vuelta a España last year, where he showed great display of mountain support for his captain. So yeah, I'm really inclined to see where he's at after recovering from the injury. He's an interesting prospect, even though his current race results do not show that. But yeah, they have George Bennett, who is not a bad rider at all. I think he can do well in this race. And then also the current under 23 world champion is in this race, Mark Hirschi. He was 10th recently at E3, but most people project him to be actually a Ardennes type of rider more than a cobbled classic specialist. So if he's already strong enough to finish 10th at a hard race like E3, which is basically the next best thing or the closest thing we have to the Tour of Flanders, and if you finish inside the top 10 in that kind of race, so what can you do in your actual terrain, the lumpy stages, the hilly stages? Really interesting rider to follow. He's only 20 years of age. And lastly, I want to mention a few riders who want to peak for the Tour de France and have not shown basically anything this year for different reasons, which are Geraint Thomas and Rohan Dennis. Both of them were not seen much in 2019 so far. I hope to see them more at the front in this race, even though Geraint Thomas also has Kwiatkowski in this race, who probably wants to do well ahead of the Ardennes. Those are his kind of races where he is the unquestioned leader for Sky most of the time. Like they also have Wout Poels in the team. But yeah, Geraint Thomas and Kwiatkowski for Sky and Rohan Dennis. That will be interesting riders to see where they are at now, because I said before with Enric Mas, those are not bad cyclists. They just have other plans. They don't want to do well, especially in April. They want to do well in July. And you can only have so many peaks during a year if you are not named Valverde, because that is basically the only rider who can hold a decent level of form throughout the year and always deliver from February to October. There are not many other riders who can do that kind of stuff. All in all, it's an exciting race. We have a few great favorites, great stage design once again, and until next time, I'm out.